How's it going, everyone? I am Dylan, this is All You Can Board, and this is what I played in May 2022, ranked from bottom to top, and I shouldn't even say bottom, because this month in particular, there were no bad plays. I don't have a disappointment, I don't have a bad session. It was a lot of really good sessions, and I skipped doing one of these videos in April, and that was mostly because I just didn't play enough games. We were doing tons of planning for our charity live stream, which I went off without a hitch. So amazing. The response has been absolutely phenomenal, so thank you all for that if you supported it. And so for May, I wanted to come back strong, and my original thought was, oh, I'll do April and May combined. But I played so many games in May, especially because of this live stream event, that just the May games by themselves, there was over 20 games to talk about. So more than enough, and I will stress again, there's not really a bad play this month. So the one at the very bottom, the first one I'm going to talk about, I didn't have a bad time playing with it. It was just, I guess, the least interesting, the least memorable out of all the sessions that I had. And again, to clarify, in case you haven't watched one of these videos before, this isn't a ranking of, my favorite games that I played this month. These are the particular sessions. So sometimes you can have a really, really good session, really good memorable moment, or time, I should say, with a game, even if that game is not in your top 20 of all time. So you might see, games ranked in different orders than maybe you'd expect from me. It could just be that I had a really good time playing that game this month in particular. So let's jump right in. The very first game that we're going to talk about is a game I played for the very first time. That is number 22 on this list, and that is Control. Now, Control is a really small, quick little card game. It plays, and I think it's listed at like 5 to 15 minutes. That's 100% accurate. I played a couple sessions of it. It goes really, really quick. The best way to describe this is, maybe this isn't the best way to describe it because you will have had to have played this game I'm going to compare it to, but it reminded me a lot of Air, Land, and Sea, just not quite as effective as I find Air, Land, and Sea to be. I love Air, Land, and Sea. I think it's a great game, and that has you playing in sort of different rows, different columns, and the values of the cards are what matters. And you're trying to win columns based on the value you have, and you're playing cards to be able to affect your board space, but also affect your opponent's space. There's no lane system in Control. It's just my area, play area, and your play area. But you are trying to play value cards that are going to get you up to 21. The first player to get to 21 is going to win. And I'm manipulating your board by cards that I'm playing as well as my own board. And you're trying to be strategic, be crafty in how you play cards and when you play them in order to be the first person to hit 21 and not let something spiral out of control. So it's a really simple game. I'm doing a really quick overview here. It's not one that I think I would necessarily go out and go out of my way to buy, but it's one of those games that if I was placing a board game order, I needed something to hit the free shipping and I wanted to add in something small to my cart, I could see myself adding this because this is a game I would just sort of bring out for a little quick session or just sort of at the end of the night in between two big games. It's a really quick playing game. I had a good time with it. It's just not one that I had such a good time with it that I would like run out to grab right away, but I would recommend it to someone, especially if you haven't played Air, Land, and Sea, or the theme doesn't matter to you, or if it doesn't fit for you, or you don't want to pick that one up for some reason. This could be another alternative. I don't want to make it seem like they play too similar, but they definitely do have some things in common. So that is Control. Next game I played, we've talked about this one before, so I'm going to be super quick with this one. This is Patchwork. I seem to play Patchwork a whole bunch. It's because it's one of my go-to games to play on dates, and I once again played it on a first date. This time played it in the park. Patchwork is a great experience. It's a great game for the park. This is a game that previously I played like in Portugal on a balcony overlooking like all this land and everything like that. It is a really great game to sort of play in that relaxing outdoor setting. So if you haven't played outdoor Patchwork, that's the big takeaway from what I'm talking about here, is try playing Patchwork outdoors, lay out a blanket, play it in the park. I think it's the perfect game for that. I had another great time with Patchwork. I don't think I've had really a bad session with Patchwork, so I'm going to just leave it there and move on to the next one. Next up, we have a game that was played on the 24-hour live stream. So whenever I mention one of these games, you can actually go and watch the session that I'm talking about, which is kind of cool. We won't be able to necessarily say that all the time. And this is Coloretto. So Coloretto is a game I had played before numerous times, I should say, lots of on Board Game Arena, a few times in person as well. This was an extra special session, which I almost felt guilty putting this so low on the list because of this extra special aspect to it, and that was the fact that Carlos' son Rio joined us for the stream, little baby there. But I'm basing this purely on the actual game itself, not on the presence of a cute little baby. So that's my justification. I love Coloretto. There's not too much to say about it. It's a really simple card game that just has you sort of weighing the risk of how much you're going to allow cards to be placed into rows that you're interested in before they might become undesirable, or there's a chance they'll become even more desirable to you. So you have to decide when you're going to take take a row and be sort of out of the round, and how long you're going to stay in to sort of get the cards you want. Scoring system is the best part of Coloretto to me. You score for your top 3 colors, the ones you have the most in, but you also lose points as well for ones beyond that. So you have to sort of weigh the risks of cards you're taking, because you're going to lose points on the same scale that you gain them. So the more you have in a color that you're losing, the more that's going to multiply and lose you more points, and same with gaining points. So really interesting little card game. If you haven't played Coloretto, I'd highly recommend checking out the video of us playing to see if it's for you. We've had a few people reach out and say that they watched that session and actually convinced them to try it out on a board game reader, pick it up for themselves. Awesome little game. That's Coloretto. Next up, I'll talk about this one pretty quickly as well, because this is one I played a whole bunch of, and that is Lost Cities. I did play this on stream with Carlo. It was the last game to close out the stream, so we were at our most tired, and I should say I was at my most vulnerable. That's the excuse I'm using for getting absolutely trounced by Carlo. Also, I just had the worst luck. I mean, go watch that final game, and you'll see how few of the handshake cards that I get. Every time I do get them, it's so late in the game that I've already committed to that color, or I've already given up on even trying to go for that color. So I'm gonna attribute my loss to just really bad luck and a lot of sleep deprivation. But Carlo might have a different interpretation. Still a great time. I love playing Lost Cities even when I lose. We also seem to somehow decide we were gonna play speed Lost Cities. Some of our turns are going by so fast. I mean, seconds. It's just sort of like boom, 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 and that's just, I guess me and Carlo have played so much Lost Cities that's just the groove we fall into. We know what we want to do on our turn. Maybe I should have been spending more time thinking about my moves. I don't know. Regardless, Lost Cities is a great game. I've played it tons on Board Game Arena, tons in the physical version. Check out that session from the live stream if you want to see us play, and especially if you want to see Carlo absolutely wipe the floor with me. Next up, we have Kingdom Builder, also played on the stream. This was myself, Carlo, and Braden that played this game, also in sort of the early hours of being up for 24 hours. This is the game that I was most tired while playing. I feel like I got my second wind after this game, so you might notice it in watching me play. It was also not a great session of Kingdom Builder for me, particularly, and I don't mean that in how much fun I had, I mean that in how well I did. I didn't do as well this time than some of the other sessions I've had, which is why I'm kind of ranking this a little bit lower. But Kingdom Builder is always a great time. So it's, that being said, it's still such a phenomenal game. I had such a great time playing with those two, and I played with them before. I just didn't perform very well. And I will attribute that a little bit to bad luck as well. I was getting the wrong terrain cards at the wrong times. I also didn't set myself up probably as best as I could. And I had an early move that I wanted to, I always forget what they're called, but it's the special ability that allows you to jump one of your existing settlements. And I had an early play to sort of just grab one right off the bat, and I happened to be going third, and both of the other guys grabbed the 2 tiles on the exact space I was going to go to. They had the exact same terrain cards, I guess, to be able to grab it. So I had to struggle just to get one of those abilities. So I had to spend a little more time than I wanted to trying to grab it. Again, I'm making excuses at this point, but it was a really good game. Just didn't have a really good session myself. Next up is Pictures. Pictures is a game that I featured on here before. I played it with Carlo and Braden this time. So what's most interesting I want to highlight here is that this is my first time playing Pictures at 3, and that's the minimum player count. And I always sort of had the impression that I was never going to really want to play it at 3, or the 3 wasn't going to be by far the least desirable. I would say it's probably still going to be, out of the 3, 4, and 5 options, it may be my least favorite, but it was a really good session at 3. So this is sort of me telling you that if that's ever been something that's holding you back, you thinking, ooh, how often am I going to get 4 or 5 to the table? That this is often the problem with a lot of party games, is that people want to have them in their collection, but they're often ideal at the higher player counts, and maybe you can only guarantee getting those groups together, once every couple months. We've been in a pandemic; it was hard to do. Pictures plays great at 3 because you're using every single item still. Yes, you have less interesting. The guessing part is a little bit less interesting because there's less guesses going on. There's less, potential banter and discussion after. But it doesn't really hamper the experience in this game in particular, whether it's 3, 4, or 5. It really is just your experience is completely based on the people you're playing with around the table. So in our case, it was a great session. We had tons of fun, lots of laughs. My only issue with Pictures still, and I really don't think there's any way to overcome this, is the perspective of, because you have people sitting on the opposite side of you, they're viewing the photos that are in the center of the table at a different angle than you are. And so they either have to build whatever they're doing with their item upside down so that the rest of us can see it the way they do, or we have to they have to build it upside down so that we see it properly, or we have to walk around the table, which is kind of what we ended up doing to see what everyone's doing. So that gets a little clunky. Honestly, the best way to play pictures is in a bigger space around a table with everyone standing. You guys can sort of just like go around the table and check out everyone's creations and see it from the right perspective, but it can be a little tricky. So that's still my biggest issue with pictures, and like I said, no real way to overcome that. Just one of those hurdles that the game just naturally has, but it hasn't really hampered the experience to the point where I wouldn't play it again. So had a great time with pictures once again. My phone is going off here. Okay, there we go. Next up is MonsDRAWsity. So MonsDRAWsity we played on the stream. I would highly recommend going and watching the MonsDRAWsity session. It was an absolute hoot. We just did one round of MonsDRAWsity just to keep it within time limits, because we were obviously working within time constraints of the live stream and all the games we wanted to get to. But it's just, it's always fun. It's literally always has people laughing on the table. I've never had a session of MonsDRAWsity, and I think I've only played it 3 times, so I shouldn't be making out like I've played like a dozen. But I've never had one of those sessions where it isn't filled with laughs and people just, you know, having an absolute blast with it. It's not a subdued game. People will be laughing around the table. People will be potentially. The first time I played, I was pretty much on the floor laughing. It's going to be dictated a lot by the group you have. You have to have people that are comfortable, sort of, you know, describing these monsters and getting into the fun of it and the spirit of it being a little bit ridiculous. But it is just an. I think I've said an absolute blast like 3 times in this description, so I'm not going to say it again. But yeah, I would highly recommend going to watch. We played a 4-player MonsDRAWsity on the stream. So much fun, and it is a game that I definitely want to have in my own collection as soon as I can find it. I just keep playing Carlo's copy because I can't seem to find it. We've had a couple people actually reach out and say that because of watching it on the live stream, they're trying to track it down now. So I feel like once this is back in stock, you're just going to see all the copies being scooped up by people realizing this is a gem they need to have for the party game aspect. So MonsDRAWsity is great. Check out that video if you want to see more. Next up, a game I played for the first time. Carlos played it previously, and this is his copy. That is High Society, a Reiner Knizia auction card game. We've talked about modern art before and how great of an auction experience from Knizia that is. This is a much quicker playing, much simpler auction card game, and I had a lot of fun with it. I think this is one I'm going to have to play more to really see where it ranks for me with other games and how much I really like it. But as a first impression, as a first time playing it, lots of fun. I love auction games. Auction games just always end up providing tons of entertainment when I play them, especially if I'm playing with, like, more so if you're playing with the right group of people that, you know, appreciate that kind of game and will get into the spirit of, you know, competition with auctioning and stuff. But it's just such a quick playing card game, and there's actually tons of tough decisions to make. With you have a limited amount of cards to spend in your hand, and they will go away if you and how does it work? It's if the person who has the least amount left in their hand can't even win the game at the end. They're just completely out of the scoring. So if you've just spent a whole bunch of your cards trying to win a whole bunch of stuff, and even if you're in the lead with points, you'll just be eliminated for having spent the most. I believe that's how it works, which is such a neat mechanic because it makes you be so much more reserved and think, ooh, I could easily throw out this card to win this auction, but is that going to put me in a position where now everyone's going to just spend less to knock me out so that I don't win? So lots to think about. It's not straightforward by any means, and for an auction game, I think that's what sort of elevates auction games, so when they're not just straightforward, oh, you just bid and you win. When they find this other way to sort of make you consider what you're willing to bid or what you're willing to spend or how you spend it or when you spend it. High Society, for a small little card game, does that, and that's, I think, the best benefit of this game, is that for such a small, inexpensive card game, to get that much value and mileage out of it and want to come back to it after a play, like I am now dying to come back and play it again, I really don't think you can go wrong. So if you're looking for that sort of auction experience, maybe you don't want to spend as much as, you know, modern art costs, or you don't have a group to reliably meet for it, this is an easy way to kind of take that initial step into Knizia auction without spending that much, and I honestly think you can't go wrong with it. Next up, we have One Night Ultimate Werewolf. This was also played on the stream. Again, I'd highly recommend going to watch this one. Tons of fun. This is the first time I had played this game well, definitely it's been since before the pandemic, so it's been at least 3 years since I played it. This is one that I used to play more often. Like I would often, when I get people together, it was to play One Night Ultimate Werewolf or The Resistance or Mafia back in the day. As I sort of started the YouTube channel with Carlo and started playing more board games, that often just took a back seat. There was other games we were trying to play. We just didn't often get the hidden roll games to the table as often. So I hadn't played Werewolf in so long, and we played I think 2 or 3 rounds of it. And oh man, I love. You need the right group of people. This One Night Ultimate Werewolf and I would say even like a game like The Mind are 2 games in my collection that I will only bring out with specific people, and that's because they are so dictated by the people you're playing with. I can have a great session of Cascadia, for instance, or even Kingdom Builder, even if it's someone who maybe hasn't played before, or even if I don't get along with them that well, the game itself isn't affected by people's personality pretty much at all. One Night Ultimate Werewolf is very much, you have to have a good rapport with people around the table. You have to have people willing to lie and kind of feed into the lying element and play along with it and really go all in on that and not get offended if you're being called a liar and things like that. And we had such a great group for it. People that I knew them all, and it was just the right personalities around. I made a mistake. Myself and my friend Ryan were werewolves for one round, and I made a mistake when my role got switched, or Ryan's role got switched, and he no longer was a werewolf, and I forgot that I still was, and so I was like, I still need to hide the fact that I'm a werewolf. And instead, I exposed it and said, we need to vote for this werewolf, and I ended up losing because of it. It's just, and I didn't care. It was just fun. I ended up laughing it off. It's such a great game to play with people you have that rapport with, you're okay lying with. I feel like have a couple drinks while you're playing with it, or don't. It's gonna lead to tons of chaos in the best way possible. So awesome game. I listed it recently on my comfort games. Watching that session, that's really the reason why, is because it's so comforting to me to be around close friends in that way, and being able to be comfortable enough with them to lie and have that kind of that you're throwing accusations across the table at people that you love, your closest friends, and no one cares it's part of the game. It's a special thing you can only share with people that you're that close with. So highly recommend One Night Ultimate Werewolf if you have not played it. Next up, we have Azul. I'm not going to talk a whole bunch about Azul because I've talked about it before, and this won't be the last time it's featured. Azul is always great. It's a reliable game. If it shows up here, I've likely had a great time with it. I played it twice this month. It was great both times. I never stop having a great time with Azul. The person I was playing with had never played Azul before. It was so I was introducing it to them. They wanted to play it a second time immediately. I beat them on the first try, and then after having played just that once, they ended up beating me on the second time we played. Amazing game. I stand by the fact that it's going to be really, really tough, no matter how many Azul versions come out, for them to find a way to top the original Azul for me. It's just the purest form of Azul, and it's so solid in everything that it does. So yeah, I won't say any more about it. I've talked about Azul many times before, but it is a phenomenal game. Highly recommend it if you somehow have not played it yet. Next up, we have Radlands. This is the game that opened the stream. I played it with Carlo on the stream. It was, again, such a great session, and this one actually I think is probably the best game of Radlands that I've played in terms of entertainment value, which is great that it happened on the stream. I continue to absolutely love this game for how quick it plays, for how much variety there is, for how different each game is, for how much a meta can develop the more often you play. With the fact that you're drawing from the same deck, you can start to know if you've drawn certain cards, what cards are now inaccessible to your opponent, and vice versa. So I love that you can sort of, the more you play, the more it rewards you for playing it. But at the same time, it just goes to show the amount of times I played it, how this ends up being such a memorable session, is that with the combination of camps that we had out, with the way that the game sort of, what's the best way to describe it? There was major swings in the game. It started off, and Carlos sort of just initially right away had me on the ropes, where I was like, oh man, I think I beat him every time we played Radlands, and I thought, here it comes. Like, he's going to just completely trounce me to start this stream. I'm trying to like catch up, but he exhausted all his resources right from the go. I basically had no cards left in his hand. He got 2 of my camps down. I think it was 2 of them down. So I was down to 1, but I was able to sort of rebound from that, and then sort of take it back to him, and now all of a sudden we each had 1 camp left, and then it swung for a while back and forth until I finally squeaked out the win. But those are the reasons I love Radlands. Those are the reasons it's such a phenomenal game, is moments like that. I continue to love this game. I cannot see it, losing favor with me anytime soon, unless another game comes along that sort of does what it does better, or just I played it so much that it starts to wear on me. It has yet to do that now. I love Radlands, and I will continue to love it as long as it continues to offer me great sessions like that. So that is Radlands. Getting into number 11, just missing out on the top 10 here, that is Santorini. So Santorini we did on the stream as well. I think we did a best of 3 of it. We did in the middle of the night, or like 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. or something like that, 5 a.m. maybe. Awesome. What you saw on the stream with us kind of doing the best of 3, me and Carlo late into the night, is kind of what we would do on cabin weekends, that we've brought a bunch of games to the cabin, and either everyone else we've come out with has gone to bed, or it's just been the 2 of us and we've just sort of done this Santorini late night session. I love Santorini for that. You can have every game feels different from the god powers. Even if you've had a god power before, if you're up against a different god power, suddenly you're playing the game completely differently. I saw god powers when me and Carlo played on the stream that I had seen before, but because, like, for instance, I had one that it was an alternate win condition, but at the same time Carlo also had an alternate win condition, so neither of us had an active ability. We just were trying to win in different ways than we normally would, and that changed the entire game. I think that's the first time I had just 2 alternate win conditions against each other. So because of how many god powers are in there, I honestly don't know how many games of Santorini it would take for you to feel like you've seen it all, or that it's starting to bore you or tire on you. It is yet to do that for me, and because of how many times I've done best of 3s, best of 5s, best of 7s, I've played so much Santorini, so that says a lot that it continues to be fresh every time I play it. And there's no rules overhead. I mean, like, every time I play, I have to read the god powers that are in the game, try to understand exactly what I'm doing with them. But the actual rules of Santorini are so simple. You move your character and you build one aspect of the tower. That's the entire rules at 2, and really that's the only player kind I play Santorini at is 2. So phenomenal game. I will continue to keep playing this sporadically whenever I'm going to the cabin, whenever I have the itch for it, and I really recommend it. I think it's on Board Game Arena now, so there's an easy way for, if you have not tried and you want to go try it out, highly recommend going and try it out. I absolutely love Santorini. All right, we're going to get into the top 10. Again, the margin for a difference between all these is pretty razor thin. All these sessions were phenomenal, but I had to rank them in some order. So number 10, also from the stream, was The Quest for El Dorado. There's really only one bad part of this session, and I thought about pushing this down on the list because of it, but ultimately the entire time I had so much fun that I just couldn't do that. And that was just that at the end, with the layout we had on the map, I was able to sort of corner Carlo's piece in such a way that we had a couple turns that were just sort of dead turns of us not playing anything until we got the right cards in our hand. But it was so exciting leading up to that, and there was such a jostling for position, and the chat seemed to be enjoying that. It's that, we were enjoying that. So it was such and I should say that me and Carlo each had very different strategies. Carlo, whenever he plays deck builders, you can always bank on the fact that he's going to try to make his deck as thin as possible and as effective as possible, which is probably the best way to play deck builds. That's not a criticism, but I tend to thin out my deck, but nowhere near as much as Carlo does. So we always kind of have different approaches, and this one was a great example of us having different approaches to El Dorado that both worked. Neither of us was ineffective. It really wouldn't have mattered who won because we both had an effective session of El Dorado. I think that's why I'm ranking it this high. It was fun. We had different approaches. It was close to the finish, and even once we got past that little hiccup where we kind of were locked in position without moving, the ending was still sort of just like I had to have the perfect cards in my hand to execute getting my character right to the end. So great game. I love playing it at 2 because you each have 2 pieces. It actually makes it a really interesting 2-player game, but it still plays well at 3 and 4. I've played it at every player count, always enjoyed it. Again, I've talked about this on the channel before, but if you're looking to get into deck builders for the first time, there's really in my opinion, there's no better place to start. This is the greatest place to start for deck builders because of how simple it is, because of how straightforward it is, and everyone has played a board game growing up or something where you're racing, and that is added into the deck building aspect, so it's super easy to sort of equate that deck building will then usually impact something else that you're doing in a board game. So highly recommended if you're into deck builders, whether you're a beginner or an expert. I think you'll have a lot of fun with it. All right, coming in at number 9, a game that I only played for the second time ever, and large gaps between playing it, so it kind of felt like I was playing it for the first time again, and that is Anomia. Anomia was played on the stream. Once again, I'm going to recommend if you want to go see us have an absolute blast playing a party game, go check out Anomia. It was so much fun. We had, I think, 5 of us playing. It's just such a frantic game. I'll quickly explain, but basically you just have these cards in front of you that have a category as well as a symbol, and whenever your symbol matches someone else's at the table, I have to come up with an example of their category before they come up with an example of mine, and you just have to yell it out. So I could have, I could have a type of board game, which I don't think is in there. I'm just gonna come up with a really random thing. Type of board game, and theirs could it be a musician. And so if our symbols match, because on your turn all you're doing is flipping a new card onto your pile. If you now create a match with someone else's symbol, I have to yell out their category answer before they yell out mine. And whoever gets that right takes the other person's card as a victory. But because you've taken that card, you're exposing a new one underneath that could now match that symbol with someone else's. So there's this frantic thing where sometimes you just snowball into, I compete with this person. And then when they win my card, all of a sudden I have to compete with this person. And then I win their card and they have to compete with this person. And so you're yelling frantically around the table. There's a wild card in the center that makes mismatched symbols sometimes match up. It's such a riot, such a hoot. Again, with the right group of people around the table, I feel like this is a great option for like a sort of a cabin game or a vacation game with a bunch of people, because you just kind of set it at the table. Rule overhead is like a couple minutes to teach. It takes no time to understand. And all you're doing is just sort of coming up with these great, and for some reason it's really hard to come up with the category answers when you're on the button like that, on the spot. So it could be something super simple like, well, so, like for me, like if Canadian cities came up, like I should get that right away. But when you're under that pressure, you're like, Winnipeg. You know, like you take that moment, and sometimes you're both doing that, and that's causing you to laugh, and you're looking at that other person and being like, are you gonna respond before I can get my stuff together here? So awesome game. I'd highly recommend Anomia. I'm probably late to the party, having only played this twice. I know a lot of people have told me about this before. I think it was Carlos' first time playing it as well. It's a great game, and again, you can watch on the stream and see how much fun we had with it. All right, and number 8, a game I've talked about before, so I won't spend too much time talking about it. Also, we played this on the stream. You can check out the session there, and that is Modern Art. The biggest takeaway, and I think I've said this before a couple times in a couple videos, but in case you missed it, is that Modern Art wasn't on my top 50 of all time last time we did, and that's because I only played it once at the time. I think I've now played it 3 or 4 times, and I can guarantee you it'll be on that top 50 next year, it probably very high up on it. Modern Art is fantastic. This is such an amazing game because of the nuance of not just auctioning. You're not just trying to win paintings. Sometimes you just want to create a market for a certain painting because you've already bought a bunch of those once and you want to boost the value of them. Or sometimes you might not have purchased a certain type of painting, but just selling them really high will earn you a bunch of money for it, and then you can try to change the market after that person spent a whole bunch of money on them. So this is the first game of Modern Art that I lost. I hadn't lost up to this point, so maybe that's why it's a little bit lower on this list. But it was still tons of fun. There's so much to consider every single time, rather than just, I need to win this painting. Sometimes you don't want to win the painting, and for good reason, or you just, like I said, you want to boost the value of it, or you want to create a fake market. And the fact that every single round paintings can stay in favor or fall out of favor can just drastically change the game. Every game I've played, there hasn't been a single dull moment. Every aspect of it has been memorable, has been something that I've enjoyed and cherished. I cannot see myself, falling out of favor with Modern Art anytime soon. Carlos still hasn't. I think it was ranked as his 3rd overall best game of all time, or 2nd, or I think it was 3rd last time. So he obviously absolutely adores this game. Such a great game. I'd really highly recommend you playing it, especially if you've played High Society and want the next step up from Knizia auction games. Really recommend Modern Art. Next up, we've got Dune Imperium. This is also a game that I've talked about before on one of these What I Played videos. I think it actually ranked as my #1 play the first time I played it. We played it on stream. It reminded me how much I love it. This is a game I need to play a lot more of. Carlo has the Rise of X expansion. I do want to play with that as well. I just want to explore this game more. It's a game that combines worker placement and deck building in sort of almost the perfect way. Lost Ruins of Arnak gets a lot of attention for doing that, but I find that Dune Imperium does it in a much more sophisticated, elegant way, if that makes sense, where they just work better because the cards that you're playing specifically impact saying, I'm playing this card for these symbols, and those symbols mean I can only place workers on these spots. Or you can use your cards for the value that's on the bottom of them to purchase new cards for your deck. So you're constantly weighing using a card to be able to go to these effective spots, or using a card to be able to purchase you new cards that are going to make your deck more effective, or trash cards from your deck, or whatever the case may be. And then it all sort of ties together with the I always forget the name of it, but the area where you're sort of doing your battles on the board, your spaces you're going to and cards that you're playing are moving your cubes into this battle area, and whoever has the most cubes after it's been impacted by different cards, you can sort of what are the cards called? I'm forgetting every name of every resource and card in this game, but there's a type of card that you have. Not treachery. Oh, I'm gonna hate that I can't remember this. Regardless, you have a type of card in Dune Imperium that you can basically play in a response to entering the battle phase, and they can say, you know, I'm going to increase my value by this much, or I'm going to remove this many cubes from the battle, or I'm going to knock this many cubes out for my opponents, or whatever the case may be. So you never go into the battle thinking, oh, this has already been decided. You know people can influence it, and so you have to sort of be prepared for the worst case scenario if winning is really important to you. Sometimes you have to overcommit, and you know, you've given up more than you need to just because you want to win. And the fact that you're just playing to win, to get to a certain amount of victory points, and which is like usually like 10 or I think or 11 or whatever the case is, means that it seems like victory is so, it's right there. I just need 10 victory points. And so every point you gain is such a big deal that jostling for points and stealing back points is such an important aspect of Dune Imperium, that every game just feels like every move is so important, but in a way that never makes me feel too stressed, if that makes sense. So I love Dune Imperium. Honestly, I cannot wait to play it again. That was my biggest takeaway from that session. And I'd really recommend actually watching the Dune Imperium session we had if you're looking to watch some gameplay of it, because it was a really close game, came down to the very end, and again, there's a lot of jostling and changing of position as well. So yeah, awesome session of Dune Imperium. Cannot wait to play it again. Next up, we have number 6, just missing out on the top 5, and this is Just One. Just One is just one spot away from the top 5. This was played on stream. Again, I'd recommend watching the entire party session block. It was such a great time. I feel like I'm saying that about most of these games, but honestly, I just had so much fun playing these board games this month. Just One is a really, really simple game. You have a clue that you have to get people to guess, and you're allowed to write one clue to get them to guess that word on your little erasable piece of plastic, whatever they're called. I cannot process words today for some reason. But if your clue matches someone else's around the table, because it's a cooperative game, you're all working together to try to get someone to guess the answer. So if I'm trying to get someone to guess flower, and two of us each, or two or more of us all write petal on our boards, none of those clues get presented to the person. So you want to try to come up with abstract clues so that no one matches and that they're able to have an easier time guessing. And that's what makes it so much fun, is that whole trying to figure out how abstract you can get with your clues, but everyone else is trying to think that abstract as well, and sometimes you end up matching clues because of that. So if you want an example of how it's played, honestly, the session we had was so much fun, and it gives a really good representation of a sort of where the fun comes out of Just One, and we have many moments where clues are canceled out because of us trying to be very abstract, and moments where we are so abstract that we get all these unique clues that it easily leads to the person guessing it. I think someone gave me a clue that specifically, I think the clue was number or numbers, and someone gave me the clue Lost because they knew that I'm a huge fan of the show Lost, and numbers are a big factor on that show. So just getting that clue by itself, Lost, would have probably left me lost, but seeing Lost with digits and other things like that, suddenly I was able to clue in right away what it is. So awesome game. Again, super easy to pick up. You can play with pretty much anyone, and it's just a great game to sort of play sitting around the couch with your family, with your friends, whatever the case may be. Highly recommend it, and check out that session if you want to see how it plays. All right, we're into the top 5 now, which obviously this was really hard to pick because like I said before, I didn't really have a bad session this month, and honestly, I had tons of really amazing sessions. But coming in at number 5, I did slot in Queen's Garden, Azul Queen's Garden. This is the newest version of Azul. We did play it on stream, and we did play it before the stream as well. Both games were me, Carlo, and Braden all played it. I really, really like this version of Azul. I'm hesitant, and I pretty much say right now I don't think this is going to be my favorite version of Azul because the original is going to be hard to top. But I obviously need to play it more to be sure. But both my sessions of this game were so much fun, and there was so much to consider and have to weigh in your decision making on which tiles you're going to take, or where you're going to place certain tiles, when you're going to give up on trying to get 6 of the same one to get the bonus. Like, this is a hard one to sort of give an overview on or really explain all the rules just in a video like this, but it has a lot of what you do really expect have come to expect from Azul, where you have tiles that you're going to have to take all tiles of the same color, or in this case, you can also take all tiles that have the same symbol showing. But they're going to go right to your sort of supply that you have on the side. You're then going to have to pay to take tiles or actual boards from your supply and put them onto your personal player board, and you're paying for those in tiles or boards as well. So not only are you taking tiles just to be able to place them, you're also taking them to use them as a currency to be able to place tiles that you're looking to place as well. And all these tiles have values. The values are what you will earn for having played those in your garden, or you can lose points if those are stuck in your supply at the end of the game. So just that alone has a lot to weigh, but then you're also having to match colors and match symbols and trying to create groups of each one. Each one's going to score separately in the final scoring, but on each round, you also have to prioritize certain colors or certain symbols that are going to score you bonus points. There's honestly just so much going on. It has a lot in common to Calico. Now, and I know that Carla doesn't seem to enjoy Queen's Garden as much as I do, and I wonder, I think we've had this conversation too, how much of that is because he's already played Calico, and Calico does a lot of what Queen's Garden does, but in a quicker playtime. And you know, for some, I feel like if you've come from Calico, you might just prefer that, or wonder, why would I play Queen's Garden when I can get that itch scratched with Calico in a shorter format and one that I already enjoy? So for me, having only played Calico once before this, or maybe twice, Queen's Garden has really landed with me, especially because I love Azul so much. The decision making and the variety, even just between the two plays I had, how different it felt in terms of what I was prioritizing, what I was going for. I'm really loving this version of Azul. I cannot wait to explore it more. I want to try it at 2 players specifically. That's where I'm most curious about it, because I've honestly played the original Azul most at 2. Love it at that player count. I've only played Queen's Garden at 3 so far. I'm really interested to see how it plays as sort of a dueling style 2-player game, whether that's maybe the best way to play Queen's Garden. I think Carlo and I will probably tackle that really soon, but so far I love what I see, and after we play enough, we're eventually going to do a video on our channel where we feature all 4 Azuls, compare them all, and let you know what our favorite version is and what our recommendations are, so keep your eyes out for that. And if you want to watch the session of Queen's Garden and see it played for yourself, you can check out the live stream. We did play it on there. All right, coming in at number 4, this has made the top 5 before, and this will probably be the last time it's featured because we were done it now, and that is King's Dilemma. We finished the King's Dilemma campaign, the group I was playing with, so the conclusion was the last session I had, and honestly, that's the reason it's ranking so high. It's number 4 on the list here. Is it, you know, there is always this aspect with campaign games that it's hard to end them well, and I say that because there's so much buildup, there's so many sessions, there's so many memories you have. It's hard to sort of have that final session be anything that culminates it all, because it's not like, I feel like campaign games don't really have a climax in that same way. The joy comes from just playing with the same group, meeting regularly, and having it be this thing that you can rely on for entertainment. Having the winner decided at the end of them isn't really, at least in my experience, ever that big of a moment. It's never like, oh, who's going to win this whole campaign? It's been more about the individual games and just the experience as a whole. So in many ways, King's Dilemma suffers from that same problem where, you know, the ending isn't necessarily some big, grand, amazing moment with these big reveals and this big, you know, culmination that it feels is worthy of it. But yet that final session was just as fun as all the other sessions, and it just sort of speaks to how much I enjoyed King's Dilemma as this exercise in just sitting around the table with some of your close friends and just having these debates and sort of getting into the role play of your house and how they would sort of you know, approach different situations that are kind of different dilemmas that are being presented to the King's Council. And the ending still was enjoyable. I was really curious legitimately who was going to win out of our group. We all had our moments, we all had our streaks where we did really well. So to see that kind of come together, and there were, I don't want to spoil anything, but obviously there were some aspects of the ending that kind of gave you this catch-up mechanism to give you one chance to sort of risk it all to try to come out on top. So honestly, just such a great game overall. I'm so excited for Queen's Dilemma now to come out so I can experience more of this and see how they can evolve on it. Final session was great, and this is the last time it's going to be on there because we're done it, but King's Dilemma, I could not recommend it more. That comes in at number 4, and that rhymed. That's great. Number 3, this is a surprise for me that this is this high. We played this on the stream. I did not expect to love it. Oh, I shouldn't say I didn't expect to love it as much as I did, because I played it before and loved it, but I didn't expect it to still resonate with me as much as it had before, and that's Blue Lagoon. Carlo's going to be super pumped to see this come in at number 3 on my list, I think. Such a great session, even despite the fact that if you watch it on the live stream, me and Carlo do not play it very efficiently. Me and Carlo end up kind of going after each other the entire time. Braden comes in this 3-player game and basically completely demolishes us for not focusing on him enough. So it's not, I wouldn't recommend approaching it from a 3-player perspective the way we did, but I will say the Blue Lagoon of 3 players is the absolute way to do it, because at 2 players, it's less interesting because you're just trying to stop one person, you're just trying to block one person, and so if my opponent puts me in a position where I have to make a decision, I just respond to it right then and there. In a 3-player game, there is this aspect of Carlo could do something to put me in a position to make a decision, but if Braden, for instance, responds by putting us in a similar predicament as well, suddenly you're having to weigh like who you want to allow to grab a resource, or who you want to allow to grab an extra spot in a territory, whatever the case may be. And there's too many things to effectively stop everything that's going on. You're going to have to give up something to gain something else, and there's just too much going on that you also can't just block everything going on. You have to almost say, I'm not going to block this, I'm going to leave it up to my other opponent to see if they are going to want to block this, they're going to allow them to make this connection, whatever the case may be. It's just such a great game at 3. I honestly, this last session reminded me how much I loved it, and now makes me want to have it in my collection specifically for times I'm happening to play this without 3, or sorry, with 3 but without Carlo, which hasn't yet happened yet. It's honestly one of the reasons I haven't bought my own copy of it, but I'd highly recommend watching that session. It's really enjoyable, even just to see Braden absolutely demolish us on his first ever playthrough of Blue Lagoon. Ridiculous. But yeah, it's a great game, and honestly, one of the reasons it's so high is because I love the game Fjords. It's one of my favorite games. And this has so many aspects from Fjords, but with a different coat of paint and a different way to approach it, that it already speaks to me just from that alone. Let alone it's just this genius approach to it, and has this infinite, maybe not infinite, but close to infinite replayability in terms of every game I've played has felt different enough that I've wanted to come back and play it again. So if you haven't checked out Blue Lagoon, check out that playthrough, or just buy it for yourself. I honestly don't think you'll be disappointed, but I would recommend only picking it up if you're going to reliably be able to play it with 3. That is the ideal playout count for sure. All right, 2 games. Number 2, I flip-flopped on both of these for a while. They were both phenomenal sessions. Both of them happened on the stream, which is kind of cool because you'll be able to check out either of these if you would like. Number 2 is Marvel Champions. Now, Marvel Champions is on this list because I played it multiplayer for the first time in a while. I've done two-handed solo a lot in all my playtests, but Braden and I played it on the stream, and we both kind of found decks we really liked with characters. For me, a character I hadn't played with in a while, which was Quicksilver, and Braden picked Venom, and we took on Green Goblin, mutagen formula, and it was such a blast. And we also did so well, but had so many moments where it looked like the game was going to spiral out of control that I think it was just so entertaining to watch. And it was also the first gameplay we've ever done of Marvel Champions on the channel, and it was Braden's first time playing multiplayer as well, so a lot of different aspects going on here. But the Quicksilver deck I had was so much fun to play. It was a protection build that just quickly spirals out of control when I build up my kit, and I was able to build up his kit pretty effectively in this game, where I was having turns where I dealt like 28 damage or 30 damage or something like that. Braden was doing some ridiculous things with Venom that I've never even seen attempted before. I know other people have played Venom this way, but I had never played with this kind of deck, and so seeing him do that was really interesting. There was a turn with the villain had where I think we had like 8 or 10 encounter cards dealt to us, which absolutely debilitated us. We somehow recovered from it. Honestly, I'd recommend watching if you like watching Marvel Champions gameplay. The reason it's on this list, even despite the fact that I play so much Marvel Champions, is just that session in particular was so much fun, so memorable, and it was mine and Braden's first time playing together. So really, really good session. I'd highly recommend watching it. That is Marvel Champions number 2. Number 1, the distinguished number 1, my favorite play of the month, goes to a game we played on stream, and one that I absolutely need to find my own copy of now more than ever, because it continues to just climb up my favorite game list the more I play, and that is Cascadia. I love this game. Cascadia, I mean, it's nominated for the Spiel des Jahres. This is should be no surprise that it's so highly regarded, and a lot of people obviously seem to share that sentiment. It's such a fun, relaxing experience while also being kind of cutthroat in the decisions you're you're making, especially when you're playing with higher than 2, in terms of which tiles are being taken, but you have, ways to circumvent that by using your tokens to sort of say, I'm going to take, a combination I shouldn't be able to take, or I'm going to wipe this to get more options on there. So you never feel like you're too, at the mercy of luck. But at the same time, you're having to adapt, you're having to pivot with, now I'm getting a bunch of these tokens, I got to build my board this way. And it's not just a matter of, I'm going to go for bears, or I'm going to go for elk, or I'm going to go for foxes. You're also having to keep a tabs on how much your terrain is expanded, how many, how big of a cluster of marsh, I think it's marshlands or whatever some of the terrains are called, grasslands, whatever. Have I built, is that larger than my opponents? Am I going to get those points at the end of the game? Are they starting to catch up to me? Do I need to get more of that terrain? So there's a lot of things to consider beyond just, I need more bears, or I need more foxes. And in this game, I lost, and I felt so confident going to scoring for some reason, but it's because I neglected the terrain clusters. And it reminded me that there really is so much going on that even despite the fact that I thought I played a really good game with the wildlife abilities and tokens that I collected, I neglected some of the terrain. I don't think I won a single terrain category. And it just reminded me that there's still so much more for me to learn and explore with Cascadia. And that's pretty exciting after 3 or 4 plays of a game. That's not always the case with board games. Sometimes 4 or 5 plays, you can start to think, I've seen everything this game has to offer now. That's not the case with this one. And I absolutely need to add this to my collection because it's one that I think it's going to be really, really good to introduce to new players as well. Not hard to learn and tons to come back for, and it's a beautiful game laid out on the table, and one of those sort of relaxing, like play on a patio, play on a Sunday morning, play at the cottage, play at the cabin. A perfect game for all the situations. So number 1 play this month goes to Cascadia, and you can watch that play on the live stream if you would like. That's everything I play. I think it's like 22 games, 20 plus games. This was an amazing, excellent month for gaming, obviously because of the live stream. The fact that most of these plays I talked about, you can go see us play, that see everything I'm talking about. There's a bunch of games that are on there that I didn't include. Like, for instance, there was an amazing game I played with Braden and Carlo of Renature, but I didn't play in that game. That's an awesome one you can watch as well. Honestly, it was just a phenomenal month for board games. It's going to be really hard to top this one. Let me know in the comments what you played this month or in these last couple months since I missed April. What were your favorite plays? Did you play the games I talked about? Do you have different opinions of them? If you want to rank your top 5 in the comments, I'd love to hear them. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I will try to be back for this every single month, but I will skip months where I just feel like I didn't play enough new games or there's not enough to talk about, because I also want to create, compelling content for you guys that isn't just, there for the sake of it. So thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.